Okay, we are in the second week of a new series that we have titled I Am, which is looking at the 7 statements of Jesus in the book of John, where he says, I am blank. And this is who he is. He's declaring who he is to the people. And we talked about last week how God in the Old Testament talked about who he was, told the Israelites, his people, who he was. And this is Jesus' fulfillment of those promises. So in human form, Jesus is saying, I am God. This is who I am. And throughout his entire ministry, Jesus uses parables, illustrations, visuals to try to help the people understand what he's talking about. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But here in these 7 statements, he does the same thing. He uses visuals that people would have understood. I am the bread, the light, the door, the shepherd, the vine. These things would have been common. As people looked around, they would have seen these things. It was language that they could understand. So last week, we looked at Jesus' statement in John 6. I am the bread of life. Munch on my flesh, if you remember that from last week. This week, we skip over to John 8. John 8. So if you have your Bible, either in hard copy like myself or on a device of some sort, John chapter 8. And I'm going to need someone to read verses 12, 13, and 14. John 8, 12 through 14. Yes, Malachi, thank you. Read it in 1 second. Let me pray, and we will get into our time together. Jesus, I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to meet in person, masks and all, and the joy of seeing people. I pray as we begin life groups this coming Wednesday that would be a good time together, that you would bring some normalcy back. Thank you for the opportunity to open your word this morning and to talk to us about who you are. I pray that you would speak in a new and fresh way this morning. In your name, amen. Go for it, Malachi.
All right. This section is called the dispute over Jesus' testimony. Verse 12 says, When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The Pharisees challenged him. Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answered, Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I am going. But you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. And that's all.
Perfect. Thank you. So Jesus speaks out again, speaking to the Jewish leaders, what were known as the Pharisees. His disciples are there, and then anyone else within earshot. He says, I am the light of the world. And that statement would have had great significance back then and has significant significance for us today. And 4 moments in history illustrate why. I'm sure there are many more, but I've chosen 4. The first comes 1,200 or 1,300 years before Jesus. There's a large group of people. They're called the Israelites, and they are called that because they were from Israel, and they had been conquered and made to be slaves to the empire of Egypt. And for 430 years, they slave away generations of people living and dying under the regime of Pharaoh after Pharaoh after Pharaoh. And finally, God sends this man named Moses to free the people along with his brother Aaron, and they lead the people out of the land of Egypt. And when Pharaoh releases the people, God doesn't lead them in a way that seems to make sense, at least on the outside. The way that would make the most sense, the way that was closest, was through the land of the Philistines, which the Israelites and the Philistines are not friends, and they run into each other a lot. But here, God takes them in a different way. They walk out of that situation and into another situation where they think, why did God bring us here? Maybe you remember, it's to the Red Sea. So they get to the Red Sea, they've got the Egyptians behind them coming to take them back, because Pharaoh's like, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And then you've got the Red Sea in front, and they're in the middle. And then God splits the Red Sea. Do you remember this? The Israelites walk through the Red Sea. And then they're in the wilderness. They have no idea where they're going. Moses is talking with God. Moses is leading the Israelites. But God shows himself to the people in a very tangible way. He leads them with a pillar of cloud by day and then a pillar of fire by night. This is a massive visual, literally in front of the Israelites, to remind them that God is a constant presence with them, a constant leading of them. So that would have been in the minds of the people when Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Follow me. The second scene is from the literal moments where Jesus is speaking. He's in this situation, Jewish people all around him, and he's speaking at the time of what was called the Feast of Tabernacles. And there are several traditions with the Feast of Tabernacles. And really the whole purpose of that feast, it was 8 days in early fall or so, as they're celebrating the harvest, and they're thinking back to when God brought them out of Egypt through the wilderness with manna, like we talked about last week with the bread. There's part of the Feast of Tabernacles where they have this ritual with eating together, thinking about the manna that came. And then there is this other tradition through the Feast of Tabernacles where a priest would take a light and climb. I don't know why it's like wigging out. That's weird to me. Sorry about that. So there are tall lamps that the priest would climb up and light as a symbol of God being the light to the world. And these lights would have been in the temple, that everywhere across Jerusalem people could see these lamps. That's why they were so tall, so that everyone, even if you weren't in the temple, everyone could see the lamps. This is the moment, literally the moment, that Jesus is saying, I am the light of the world. Some scholars think that Jesus said this right before they lit the lamps at night. So that's the second moment. The third moment comes about 1900 years after Jesus, specifically in the winter of 1965. There are two cave explorers, one named Josie Lores, let's say her name was, and then, I mean, that's her name, I just don't know how to pronounce it, and then Antoine Seni. And they're cave people, cave explorers, they're not cavemen, who embarked on this mission in the name of science. They go down by themselves into a dark, desolate cave for months to test the effects of isolation, of loneliness, of darkness. They're not together. They're in two completely different caves, and they go down there. The only connection they have with the outside world is researchers who are monitoring their sleep patterns, their eating habits, and their vital signs. So these two people have no idea what's going on. Research shows that Seni in particular would sleep for 30, 40 hours at a time and then wake up and only feel like he had just taken a nap. Like there's all of this complete disorientation. When Lores, the woman, she stayed in 88 days. And she came back out, and she came back on March 12th, 1965. But in her mind, she thought that it was February 25th. She had lost 2 weeks because of her calculation. Seni stayed in 126 days. And when he came out, it was April 5th, and he thought it was February 4th. He had literally lost February, March, April, 2 months of time in his mind. The body, our body's natural rhythm, our cycles rely on natural light. And without it, we just lose all sense of time. We lose all sense of direction, and not to mention the isolation and the loneliness that they experience. Think Tom Hanks when he makes friends with a volleyball in Castaway. That's the experience that you get in total darkness. That's the third one. The fourth is just a fun story. It may not completely apply, but I just thought it was a fun story about light. The fourth is from the summer of 2018. A group of us went to Peru, and this is John Gosper, Big John, Juan Grande in Spanish, and he went along with us. Maybe some of you know John. And one of the things that we did is minister to an organization, a ministry where moms disciple other moms, young moms. But they didn't have electricity in their house. So they had Bible study, but when it got dark and their kids went to bed, they couldn't do Bible study anymore because they couldn't see. And so John used some of his electrical know-how and installed lights in their house. So now they can do Bible study at night. These four stories show us the importance of why Jesus uses light as a symbol, as an example, as a visual of who he is. Light. It's necessary to travel. It's necessary to see at night. It shouldn't be lost on us that Jesus says, the one who follows me will never walk in darkness. Again, that visual of the pillar of fire. Follow me. Not the one who looks to the light, the one who follows the light. He's saying, remember how God led? That's how you should follow me. And light, it's essential for survival, for our sanity. Jesus says, I am the light. Just as Lores and Seni, when Jesus is not a factor in our life, when we don't have that light guiding us, we lose all sense of purpose. We grasp for something else. We are lonely. We're depressed. We feel isolated. Life without Jesus is dark. Following Jesus, the light of the world, gives us this assurance of avoiding the dangers of the darkness. Things just start to sound scarier in the dark. Things just start to feel more odd in the dark. The promise of possessing the light of life, having Jesus, gives us this freedom as we walk through a dark world. We know that the light has significance and purpose and meaning in our own lives, but when that's translated to our spiritual life, Jesus says, that thing that you need, that thing that is essential, that you can't live without, that's who I am. That's what I am. When it comes to lighting in our house, I am a big lamp fan. Hope does not enjoy lamps. She likes overhead light. I think she just likes light in general, and she feels like lamps don't quite make the cut. We, as a general rule, we like natural light in our home, and if we had enough windows and light through that, then I think we would be completely okay with never turning on overhead lights or lamps at all. But I like lamps because they feel inviting, they feel cozy, they feel nice. Overhead lights are they're just too much, they're just trying too hard. And then you've got this fluorescent lighting that's just like biting. It's just like harsh. It's just not enjoyable. I have fluorescent lights in my office and I just never turn them on because it just feels so sterile to me. You know, I just feel like I'm in a waiting room, just like ready for a colonoscopy or something, like just that feeling. So I have lamps. My office feels very much like a living room, which I appreciate. I get made fun of by everyone on staff, but hey, they're the ones who come to sit on the love seat and enjoy their time. So if they make fun, clearly the proof is in the pudding that they're sitting in my comfy chairs. So, lamp in the corner of the room, but light has all sorts of feelings, right? You have bright sun, you have a roaring fire, or you can have like glowing, kind of smoldering embers. You can have soft moonlight. When light bulbs, you notice that light bulbs are explained or described by feelings, like warm light or cool light. Have you noticed this? Have you ever bought light bulbs? It's a thing that you do when you're an adult, and that's the most fun that you ever had is going to buy light bulbs. I follow a lot of you on Instagram, and so I know that you love sunsets and sunrises with beautiful, I was going to say cheesy, but no, beautiful quotes with your sunrises and sunsets. You know who you are. So light evokes emotion, right? And in my life, I have seen Jesus be all of those types of light for me. There have been moments where Jesus has said something to me that has felt biting, that has felt harsh, mainly because I know that it's true, and I feel that, and I feel like I'm going into a colonoscopy with Jesus. That's the quote of the day. Don't go home and tell people that I said that. So there are times like that, but there are also times that it's like warm, just like inviting, like just cozy to be with Jesus. Sometimes there's experiences that feel like this roaring fire, that it's powerful. It just can't be contained. But there are other times where he's just there. He's just like glowing embers. He's just kind of present in the calm, in the storm. There's like this all-encompassing experiences. There's a reason that you put cheesy/beautiful quotes with sunsets and sunrises, that you see Jesus in the beauty of the light. Jesus says, I am the light. I am all types of light. You can go on forever thinking about metaphors with light that apply to your spiritual life. I am the light of the world. And then Jesus says something very intriguing. And I don't know if he says these, I don't know which one he says first. Because in Matthew 5, during his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says this phrase, you are the light of the world. And I can't figure out if he says, I am the light of the world, and then you are the light, or which one comes first. But the point is that we give off some sort of light as well. And if it's done right, Jesus, the light, should impact how our light shines as well, right? And everyone gives off light, Christian or not. Everyone gives off a feeling, an emotion, right? You just kind of feel, you know how people are. But the trick is that when people know that you're a Christian, they start to notice your light a lot more. You know how when you walk in a room and sometimes you just don't notice the light. Like it's just there to help you. But then sometimes you walk in a room and you're like, man, that is beautiful, or that sunrise is just so beautiful. In the same way, when people know that we're a Christian, whether they realize it or not, they are starting to analyze our light. They're starting to say, okay, what type of feeling does this person give me? What type of way do they respond to situations? What kind of light are they? There's a reason that Jesus says, you are the light of the world. And what's cool is, Jesus says, I am the light. And then he says in John 14, I'm giving you the Holy Spirit, and you are the light. Like I said a couple weeks ago when I was the blind man, if you saw that message. It's almost like Jesus is passing the torch to us. That we are now the light to the world. Light's an interesting thing. It's something that we need. It's something that we feel. It's something that sometimes we notice, sometimes we don't. But when it's not there, we do notice. When it's nowhere in sight, when we can't see anything because there is no light, we notice. And I think in this time of the world, people are noticing darkness. People are sensing that something is not right. People are saying, I know that that should not be happening. Even the worst person that you can think of recognizes that the world is dark right now. And I think that the light of the world has something to say about that. And I think us as the light should say something about that, should do something about that, can make a difference with that. I don't think Jesus said, I am the light of the world, you are the light of the world by accident. I think he had a purpose. That's all I have. Jesus, thank you for the visuals that you give us. I love the visual of the light. It's so accessible. We see light. We see darkness. We understand that. Even someone who doesn't know you, who doesn't believe in you, understands the difference between light and dark, can see the science that light is needed, can see the ramifications of places without light. It's so easy to understand. And as we think about it in our own life, as we think about it from a spiritual perspective, I pray that we would harness that and use that in a way that makes a difference. That we would speak up and be lights in the darkness today. In your name.